TCI is brought to you by TaylorMade Stallion Unbridled Song, producing top songs year after year, including 13 Grade 1 winners. Visit unbridledsong.com.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup alongside Joel Cunningham and Ed DeRosa. I'm John Siegel. Guys, before we move into this weekend's races, I'd like to take a quick look back at the Pacific Classic. If we could pull up the Twin Spires TV race replay. Joel, you see Dullahan here running down who some consider the best horse in the country right now in Game On Dude.
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. In terms of older horses, Game On Dude, to me, is your leader in that Breeders' Cup Classic division. And I like what I saw here from Game On Dude over a surface that he's not at his best at, the poly track, John. He makes a big middle move here, sustains that run all the way to the wire for Chantel Sutherland. I thought it just showed how good a form he's in. If he can sustain that to the end of the year at Santa Anita, he's going to be tough. But you saw Dullahan make that huge run on the turn, John, over the poly track. It was reminiscent of his bluegrass run, and you knew he meant business at that point. Came home in a shade under 24 seconds here, and here's a colt now. 3 starts on the poly track, 3 Grade 1 wins. You want to talk about a niche. Dullahan on the poly track, he is tough to beat.
All right, you're hearing on the poly track that he's the best horse out there. My question to you, Ed, is he the best 3-year-old in the country?
I think he is by virtue of the 2 Grade 1 wins this year. No other horse in training currently has that. So to me, he is the best 3-year-old. The question is where he goes from here, because the polytrack options are pretty thin the rest of the year.
Right.
Long term, I'd say the Dubai World Cup has to be on the radar. That's Tapeta footings. But he has earned a berth in the Classic. They went for the Derby. I'd be shocked if they didn't take a run at it.
All right, guys, let's jump now into this weekend's races. We have a huge weekend of racing, but none bigger than Saratoga's card on Saturday. Joel, let's talk about the Forego first, because we see MC in here, a horse who's been on the TCI Top 5. Does he break through and get it done this weekend?
Well, I'm still on board. You know, he disappointed me last time out in the Vanderbilt. I mean, here's a colt that, you know, still hasn't beat the best of his generation yet and broke through in a great at stake. You know, came in fresh. I really expected a big performance in the Vanderbilt. But, you know, Rothko pushed him, if you can recall, through a 44.5 that day and really set up for, you know, sort of a slingshot effect with the closers. Poseidon's Warrior, Justin Phillip, you know, obviously rallying on the outside there. But MC stayed on. Now second off the layoff, stretching back to 7 furlongs. To me, he's the colt that's going to get first run on probable pace setter Pacific Ocean in here. And in my opinion, I think he's going to be the one to beat late, or the one to catch late. Now, you have some interesting closers in here. You know, most notably Jackson Ben, who loves the track, but he's not the greatest form right now. So Jackson Ben has to overcome, you know, his disappointing performance in the James Marvin and a little training incident he's had that's caused a little mini layoff there. So be interested to see if he can return to form. And then Shackelford, a horse that, again, a lot of people thought he might have been a Horse of the Year candidate after he won the Met Mile. But guys, if you look at the Travers last year at Saratoga and then the Vanderbilt where he was dead last, I mean, he's gotten beat by a combined like 31, 32 lengths in 2 starts at Saratoga. So hard to be optimistic about his chances this weekend.
Well, you just heard him mention Jackson Ben and Shackelford. Do you think one of those 2 horses can win this race?
I think they can win. I like Jackson Bend a little better just because I think of the good horses in the race, Pacific Ocean, MC, Shackelford, they're all going to be near or on the lead. I think that's going to compromise their chances. So I do like Jackson Bend closing. But, man, you talk about on form. His trainer only has 2 wins at the meet. So you do have to worry about how he's coming into this race, both as a horse and his conditioning. Cakes Electronica is another horse I think could be closing late. He'll be the biggest price of all that we mentioned, so that's who my money is going to be on.
All right, let's move now to the Classic division and talk about the Woodward. There's 2 horses in here that had a ton of buzz going into the beginning of the year. Mucho Macho Man and To Honor and Serve. To Honor and Serve has not run very well this year. JC, does he turn it around and get it done here?
You know, I don't think he's run bad this year, John. He just really disappointed last time out in the Suburban. I even thought his Met Mile was okay. But last time out in the Suburban, you really expected him, you know, around 1 turn at Belmont, a track he liked, stretching out a little bit to a 1.8 miles. I wanted to see him step up in there. Instead, we saw Mucho Macho Man with the breakout performance. You know, a horse that disappointed on Derby weekend at Churchill Downs. Got Mike Smith, Mucho Macho Man, really showed he's probably the top contender in that Breeders' Cup Classic division now on the East Coast. I just don't see To Honor and Serve, you know, overcoming that. I mean, now Mucho Macho Man skipped the Whitney, so the bounce factor's out, pointed for the Woodward. How's he going to make up the ground now? The only way I can see him doing it is the fact that To Honor and Serve owns a win at Saratoga. Obviously, Mucho Macho Man does not. So the fact that, you know, To Honor and Serve likes that surface, it is a typey surface. We've seen that. You know, if Mucho Macho Man doesn't fire over it, then maybe he can be upset.
Ed, does it come down to one of those two horses for you?
It does. I'd like to be more creative, but hopefully with Cakes of Electronica earlier, I'll catch a price there. But these two are the best in the race. They're the fastest. I think one of them is absolutely going to win. Honor and Serve is a little interesting for the reasons you mentioned, though. He has run okay. He's been bet heavy, so in that regard, he has been a disappointment. But I certainly think his efforts this year are capable of winning this race. So it's one of those two for me.
All right, besides these two races, because we obviously can't talk about all of them, tell me which race you think will most likely affect the Breeders' Cup the most besides the Woodward and the Forego.
I'm looking forward to the Hopeful Stakes. We've seen some good 2-year-old fillies this year, maiden wins, stakes wins. I'm still waiting for a colt to have a breakout performance. I think we could see it in the Hopeful.
JC?
Could see Arch Warrior today, Thursday for Pletcher. But a lot of hype with Arch Warrior.
Absolutely,
we'll see.
huge.
But, you know, the Hopeful could actually be more of his second stringers. John, I'm going to stick with the 2-year-olds like Ed, but I'm going to stay on the West Coast. The Del Mar debutante, and that's executive privilege, obviously undefeated. Now, I think she could be vulnerable sprinting 7 furlongs on the poly track, but that's not the point. In terms of the Breeders' Cup, mile 16th and juvenile fillies at the end of the year at Santa Anita on the real dirt, I still think she's the leader in that division.
All right, it's time to tackle the topics. Huge announcement for the industry came out this week. That is that Vinery will be selling all 3 of their divisions, New York, Kentucky, and Florida. Ed, what does that speak to the state of our industry right now?
I'm disappointed. I mean, I understand the business behind it if your kids aren't into it, but this really follows on the heels as well of Overbrook getting out. They sold out, and the reason was exactly the same. Mr. Young's kids just didn't like it. The grandson was into it a little bit, but you know, it was a huge operation, and he didn't want to do it all on his own. And now Vinery is sort of following that footsteps. I'd like it a lot better if we had new blood coming in, excited to buy it. But really, when these sales have happened, it's pretty much been parsed out to people who are already in the game. We saw it with Mr. Evans' estate in Virginia as well.
Right.
It's the same people buying it. I wish there was some new blood to come in and take advantage of these sales. But to me, that's what's disappointing about it, is it's not attracting new players.
All right, JC, you just heard him say that, you know, it's the kids, you know, they don't want to carry it on like we heard with Overbrook. What can we do to get that passion for this industry into the next generation?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest concern, John. You need to see more operations like TaylorMade, like Claiborne, which has endured for essentially 100 years. And the fact that it's been a family-run business, and it's been horsemen breeding horsemen, and that passion, we've seen it to carry on the business, from generation to next. We're not really seeing that now. And there's a lot of old players that have major farms. We won't get into names, but you wonder, as they get older, as time passes, if they're going to remain in the family. It's a huge issue for the industry, in my opinion. And I think Vinery will go on. I mean, they said it was a profitable operation. If you listen to the quotes, hopefully somebody new will come in, maybe take it over. I mean, it was profitable, and Ben Walden had it as well. So be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, guys, one thing for sure, we're not going to solve this problem in today's show. I appreciate your time and your input, and I thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to recap this massive weekend of racing.